In this video, this will be more of like a, uh, kind of want to say a rant, but it's more of like some opinions and thoughts, and a little bit like of a review of Borderlands 4. You know, and to preface this, I do not have a high end PC. It's very much mid range, mid range, if not by I think today's standards, like low end RTX 2080 with a Ryzen 5 3600, 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It's not top of the line by any means, right? So let's get that out of the way before anyone hears what I have to say and they're like, "You have a dog, you have a dog doo doo PC." I know. You don't have to tell me. I know, but my PC has been trucking along and has actually not been struggling too much of like other games, including Borderlands 4. Now that being said, right, I do think the performance of the game is kind of dog. Like many other people who have lower end hardware than I do, and people who have like the best PCs that money can buy, the game has optimization issues. Full stop. Nothing Randy Pitchford or anyone can say to prove otherwise. The game has optimization issues, or if it isn't optimization issues, it has extreme memory leaking and like shader compilation problems that really do need to get addressed. Not just for PC players, but also for console players because they're having memory leak and like performance issues as well. But moving away from the performance talk of Borderlands 4, and to also preface this, I have not gone past the Fade Fields region of the map, but I have done a fair bit in there, and I've yet to fight. What is it? Idolator Soul. Right. Spoiler warning for anyone who's like, oh, and it's like you're gonna end up fighting him. It's made pretty self evident. It's made pretty evident when you first see his hologram that he's gonna be like a boss or some kind of major antagonistic character. But so far, from my first impressions of Borderlands 4, but besides the performance aspect of it, it's pretty good. It's weird. It reminds me a lot of Borderlands 2, like to a degree, and then it has some of the nicer aspects of Borderlands 3 implemented into like the core gameplay. Now, I do have some negatives about the game that aren't performance related. Like I think the UI is kind of doo doo. Like it's kind of bad looking. It's different. Like it's very different than what the kind of UI we've had for like our inventories, like in Borderlands 2 and in Borderlands 3. Yeah, I know things change and whatnot, and change isn't inherently bad. But the UI for the inventory and skills and maps and everything, it's kind of whatever. It's kind of mid. Um, Making it to where you don't have to go to a respec machine or a new U station to change your like whatever hat you're using or whatever paint scheme you're using. I think that's overall a good change. Like just period. Like being able to change your customization for your Vault Hunter at any time rather than having to like stop what you're doing, go to a new U station and then like do it there is good, is a positive. Same thing goes with like upgrading your bank, or your inventory space for like ammo types of like different weapon types and your bank space and your lost loot space. All that being able to be done through your inventory instead of having to go to a vendor like Marcus or Crazy Earl from previous uh, Borderlands titles like Borderlands 2, pre sequel, and Borderlands 3. I think that's overall a positive change. Even if the way you go about getting like the currency to upgrade your inventory space and whatnot is through doing like side objectives on the map, like finding echo logs or liberating camps or some such like that. It is what it is. Like it's not a bad thing. Borderlands 4 is very much an open world game, so You're gonna have the open world, like collectible aspects of it, like an Assassin's Creed title or a Far Cry title. So it's not a negative. If you're someone who doesn't really enjoy that aspect of of a open world esque game where you're like there's a bunch of little like trinkets and bits and bobs you can go and collect, and that does have some kind of impact on the game, um, then unfortunately that aspect of Borderlands 4 is just not going to be for you, or you're just going to probably end up disliking it. Um, Being able to summon your vehicle, like right off, not I would say right off the rip, but like being able to have a vehicle that you can summon, similar to like the Sparrow from Destiny, is nice. Although it feels super clunky to drive. The handling on it feels bad. I know you can change like the different like tuning or profiles based on like manufacturer for the digi skimmer, whatever it's called. Um, I haven't messed around with it too much, but if the base performance of that vehicle has anything to go by, man, the handling is just dog. It's just it feels so bad to drive, and there's that. When it comes down to enemies and enemy variety, once again, I've not beaten the game. I've not gotten super far into it, but I've run into a fair bit of things. I mean, the Rippers are just psychos. They're bandits. They're what you are more or less run into in previous titles. Now, obviously, there are some new ones like splicers or splices and breakers. Guys who are missing their lower half, but will freaking have like bionic legs that will break dance, kick you when they get close to you. Those are cool. Meatheads. They're basically like Goliaths from Borderlands 2. Like there's a little bit of like things that you're gonna be familiar with, like with the psychos and badass psychos and the little small midget psychos and all that stuff. Like that's all gonna be you know familiar to longtime players. And then there's obviously new things, new enemies, even like part of the Rippers, but also the Order faction. They're synths. That whole faction is like completely new. Aesthetically, I'd say that there's reminiscent to Hyperion, like in a very vague way. Yeah, it sounds funny because like, oh, the loaders looked like big, bulky, blocky robots. Yeah, but what I mean more is like their weapons too loosely have a degree of like similarity of Hyperion, and then the enemies, well, primarily they're all synths. They're all artificial, like android kind of things. So in terms of like their health bars, they're mostly armor, or sometimes they have shields, sometimes they have health. But usually it's like, hey, this faction, just at least from my experience thus far, is they have nothing but armor. So corrosive weapons are really good, and if they have shields, then shock weapons are really good. Speaking of shields, a really nice change that Gearbox made to Borderlands 4, because I believe this wasn't the case in Borderlands 3 and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, if memory serves me correctly. You no longer need to de-shield enemies in order to land crits. So if you know the crit spot of an enemy is their head, but they have like 2 layers of shields, in the past, you wouldn't be able to crit them until you broke that shield, or all of their shields. Well, now, in Borderlands 4, because there are enemies that have both their health bars are just shields, in some cases, you can actually headshot and like crit things that have shields. So that's a really nice change that really makes gunplay feel a little bit better and not so much of a slog, because from the past there were definitely times in Borderlands 2 and 3 and even in Wonderlands where you're far along, and then you run into that one enemy, whether it's a badass or not, and it's oh, they have a shield. I'm hardly doing anything to them, and I really need to land crits to do my damage. But overall, it's not anything terrible, not anything bad. It could be worse. But that's my overall thoughts on like the game stuff. I know in terms of the characters, I don't have any experience playing Amon, the Forge Knight. The character I've been playing so far is Rafa, the Exo Soldier. I very much enjoy him. He feels a lot like playing a commando in previous titles. I would say compared to Borderlands 3, he feels, at least to me, most similar to Zane, where you can be very gun oriented or like ability or status effect oriented and whatnot. Granted, my memory's a little fuzzy of Borderlands 3. I played it a fair bit, but I didn't play it like nearly enough or as much. Apologies for yawning. It's a little late. I'm a little tired. But but yeah, overall, like the characters from what I've experienced with playing Rafa, he feels really fun. Feels really nice. From what I've seen of other people, other friends of mine, and other members of the community, um, Vex is insane. She has a very insane damage dealing builds with bleed. Amon can be very, you know, very good with like ice and fire, and I'm not like too knowledgeable of like the interactions and stuff he has with some of his abilities. Most of the crazy stuff I've seen is with Vex and a little bit of Rafa, but overall, like with the characters, they seem very thought out, not terribly designed. Obviously, there's some action skills that are just gonna not feel as good compared to others. Like I know Rafa's melee action skill is not as good as his photon cannon or the little like gun turrets over his shoulders. That's the one I personally use. I intend on using the elemental beam keystone for the red skill tree. But yeah, and then like and just speaking about guns, speaking about the weapon sandbox, um, overall it feels good. Jacob's guns feel solid. They hit hard. Like you would expect Jacob's guns to hit hard. Torg guns also are Torg guns. They're explosive. They tend to do a lot of damage. They shoot for slow. What you expect? Maliwan weapons actually kind of feel a little weird. I'm also personally just not a fan of Maliwan shotguns. They don't feel very good. It's kind of iffy. And then you have Ripper, which is the bandit in quotes manufacturer for Borderlands 4, and their guns feel I would say good. The delayed the delayed charge trigger for their weapons isn't as annoying as it is for order weapons. Uh, because most of the Ripper weapons tend to be full auto, they tend to actually be fairly accurate, and ammo, at least in my experience, hasn't been too much of a concern. I'm sure that may change depending on weapon and like suffix and prefix and all that parts. But overall, Ripper weapons don't feel bad. Order weapons feel terrible. Like order sniper rifles feel actually pretty decent. That's just because they feel more like railguns than they do anything else. But Ripper assault rifles, Ripper pistols, and SMGs, they're not it. They're not it. Yes, you don't have to charge them. You can just like tap the trigger, and you'll just pew 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 pew. You'll fire semi-auto. But dude, like order's not it. It's such a mid feeling weapon manufacturer in a Borderlands 4. And then there's Daedalus. Daedalus feels really good. Their pistols I'm not the biggest fan of being burst fire, but that just kind of reminds me of Dahl pistols from Borderlands 2 and 3. But Daedalus weapons are cool. I like their gimmick of you can use one weapon that dips into two different ammo types. So like you can get a submachine gun that is obviously a submachine gun and it uses submachine gun ammo, but you can press the alternate fire mode key on your keyboard or your excuse me, or the down, the deep down on the D-pad on the controller, and swap from SMG ammo to assault rifle ammo or pistol ammo or sniper ammo. And it's like cool, and the gun behaves slightly differently when you do that switch to the other ammo type, and then its damage profile changes the thing a little bit. But overall, it's really really cool. Like it's not terribly different than like how Dahl worked in Borderlands 3, where you could change the rate of fire, and it also like changed the scope a little bit. It's an extension of that, but I would say to this degree it's impactful. And like my friend Tyler pointed out to me with regards to Daedalus, is it allows you to do like a one weapon type playthrough, like challenge playthrough. So like if let's say you're like, I only want to use submachine guns, okay, cool. Just get 4 Daedalus submachine guns. Make sure that, or potentially not even 4, but like get Daedalus submachine guns. Make sure that each of them have something different, where it's like one dips into SMG and AR ammo, another dips into SMG and pistol ammo, another dips into SMG and shotgun ammo. You could do that, and you just run one manufacturer's weapon, or you could just do the whole like I only have one gun, but it uses SMG and AR ammo or SMG and pistol ammo. That's overall really really cool. Moving away from normal guns, and we're going to talk about ordnance, such so the grenades, throwing knives, and rocket launchers and the heavy machine guns. It really cool. Now, in terms of grenades, like the throwables, the throwable grenades, something I didn't know until more recently in my playing is that different manufacturers have different like inherent intrinsic effects. So an example being Ripper grenades are basically like longbow grenades from Borderlands 2. So you can take it, cook it, hold on to it, release the grenade button, and then the grenade will just appear at wherever your cursor or your reticle is aiming at. Okay, cool. Order grenades, I believe, are homing, if I recall that correctly. So, that's cool. I don't know what the specifics for the other manufacturers are, but you have that. You of course then have throwing knives, which I believe are Jacob's grenades. I say grenades in quotes. They're cool. They're like longbow grenades in my opinion, but just like, hey, it doesn't like instantly just appear there. It's like you have to throw it and it has to travel. Overall, pretty solid. A lot of the ones I've been finding that are like that are singularity throwing knives. But moving away from throwables and moving into like the heavy ordnance weapons like rocket launchers and the auto cannons slash like Gatling guns, they're really powerful. Some less so than others. Some weapon manufacturers I think are less potent than others, but I think it depends on like how you want to use them. Like Malian 1 weapons are going to be better at like status effect or elemental damage, whereas flat off heavy weapons are just big gun go burr kind of thing. And rocket launchers can be the same sort of deal. So the way that Gearbox did the whole heavy weapon slash like ordnance system, I think is really cool. It means that you don't have to worry about buying grenades or finding them. They just have a cooldown that recharges, and once it's done recharging, you can then use them. Stepping away from ordnance, you of course have your little like Bulletstorm-esque like grapple whip thing. That's nice for being able to grab collectibles from a distance that some of them you need to interact with, or little explosive canisters. Is it nice to have? You can also do a little bit of movement tech in certain locations of the map, from my experience so far with the grapple Of course, you have sliding, you have clambering, you have wall climbing, which I actually thought was kind of interesting that they implemented wall climbing on certain surfaces. Really interesting. And then, of course, you have a double jump and you have a glide. Uh, the glide I wish was better. Now, granted, it's probably I'm probably saying that just on the basis of like I don't have it upgraded yet from like going and doing any like in game grind later on. Um, but just so far, gliding feels a little mid. Is but but yeah, like so far, my first thoughts and impressions of Borderlands 4 are that in terms of like a game, it's a really solid game. The gunplay is good. The story so far has been pretty solid, if not maybe a little tiny bit predictable. But I mean, it's a Borderlands game. The narrative has never been anything like super groundbreaking and like, um, um, do I think the open world format works for Borderlands 4? I think it does. Because I mean, Borderlands was always kind of an open world game, but I mean, like a seamless open world, like how it is currently. I think it can. I think it works, but I think that the performance of the game definitely is hampering that experience. Looping back around to the my talk about performance, the game is just poorly optimized. Right, I am not using a monster slash high end, you know, gaming rig for my PC. I have a 2080 RTX 2080 with a Ryzen 5 3600, 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It's not high end by any means, but it runs a fair deal of other current, like within the past 1 or 2 year release games, and has hardly struggled. I've played other UE5 games on it that at first had poor performance, but then as time went on, either through optimization patches or through my own tweaking of settings, uh, they ran smoother. So the game just runs poorly. No matter how much Randy Pitchford wants to gaslight people into thinking that it's optimally, optimized, the game is just not. As someone who has a low to mid tier PC, it's not optimized for the people who have the best PCs I'm going to get by. It's not optimized for console players. Whether you're Xbox or PlayStation, it's not optimized. I, there's empirical evidence. There's empirical evidence that the game just runs like dog doo doo, and that's not me saying that just because it runs for you that means that there's no problems. If the game runs for you and it runs for you fine, regardless if you're using DLSS or FrameGen or not, I really don't care. If the game is running well for you, cool, like amazing. I'm happy. I'm sure along with other people are happy that you're able to enjoy the game and all that. But there are for a lot of people performance problems, and these are either more or less apparent for those people or like myself, and those problems do negatively impact the experience. No amount of being reductive and just saying, "Oh, upgrade your rig," solves problems. And especially like a lot of people point out, where if you could have a 5090 and the most top of the line Intel processor with a crap ton of DDR5 or DDR6 RAM and still have crappy performance. And it's like, that's a $2,000+ gaming PC. Like, what? That shouldn't be struggling, even on like not max settings at 4K. So that's my 2 cents. That's overall my thoughts and first impressions on Borderlands 4. Uh, I don't have any. Once again, I'm gonna apologize for this if I hadn't already. I apologize for not having any gameplay in the background because I am fairly confident my PC would not be able to stably run and record Borderlands 4. So I would rather not. I'd rather not risk anything. Uh, but hope you guys enjoyed my first impressions and thoughts and kind of review of Borderlands 4. Do I intend on making a more fleshed out review once I complete the game? Um, I don't know. I don't think so. I think overall my thoughts on the game so far are going to be pretty much consistent and the same until performance gets updated or optimized. There's not really much more to add about it. The game just runs poorly. If the story continues to be kind of like how it's going, then it's not going to be bad, not and all that, and overall positive stuff. The game overall feels good, plays well, and all that. And if this keeps up even into the end game and or to the the end of the story and the end game like loot grind, then there's nothing really more to add to it. The game just feels good. But with that, guys, hope you guys are having a great, wonderful time wherever you may find yourself. And if you're not having a good time wherever you may be finding yourself, well, I hope things can turn around and get better for you. If you're having performance issues with Borderlands 4, well, I hope Gearbox really does a good optimization patch and not just a crappy guide or gaslighting people into thinking that they have crap PCs and it's our fault. Um, yeah, but until next time, guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.